Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, China testing its ability to seize Taiwan. How is the U.S. responding to the massive drills encircling the island? Tensions also rising inside the island. 85,000 people took to the streets in Taipei, Taiwan's capital. They're protesting a new law that could pave the way for more of Beijing's influence on the island. A Chinese spy going public. He reveals the inner workings of Beijing's global operation to maintain its power.
Anyone that's against the Chinese Communist Party and Xi Jinping could become a target.
And the rivalry between the free world and communist rule arising in Africa. President Biden met with his counterpart from Kenya, a democratic country in Africa under heavy Chinese influence. China's military is on its second day of war games around Taiwan on Friday. Beijing says the drills are a test of its ability to seize and control key areas. It also says the exercises are punishment for the inauguration speech of Taiwan's new president. The drills started just 3 days after Lai took office. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has reactions to China's war games.
The Chinese regime on Friday said it was continuing war games around Taiwan as a test of its ability to seize power, launch joint attacks, and occupy key areas. The CCP drills, dubbed Joint Sword 2024A, started just after Taiwan swore in a new president this week. The Chinese military on social media Friday posted an animated video of missiles being launched at Taiwan with major cities in flame. Taiwan's defense ministry released images of its armed F-16s. It says were mobilized to monitor and shadow China's forces. It also put up pictures of CCP Coast Guard and naval vessels taking part in the drills. Taiwan says it detected 49 Chinese military aircraft, along with 19 Navy and 7 Coast Guard ships as of 6 a.m. Friday. The Defense Ministry says around half of the aircraft crossed the Taiwan Straits median line. The CCP says it doesn't recognize the unofficial border. An international group of 250 lawmakers from the US, UK, France, and other countries called for condemnation of the drills and a shared commitment to maintaining the status quo. The European Union urged restraint, saying tensions in the Taiwan Strait should be resolved through dialogue. The EU called for both sides to preserve the status quo. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Washington is also reacting to China's drills around Taiwan. A U.S. aircraft carrier is in the Philippine Sea in waters east of Taiwan. Meanwhile, Navy troops from the U.S. and the Netherlands conducted operations in the South China Sea in waters south of Taiwan. Taiwan's defense ministry noted that even though Beijing ordered live fire drills inside China,
so far we haven't seen China use live fire in its drills in the Taiwan Strait.
Important to note, a Chinese military expert said the Chinese military exercises focused on practicing a new mode of cutting off the island's connections to the outside. The expert described Taiwan as an isolated island, noting its economy relies on exports and that Taiwan gets its energy supplies through imports. If China was to cut off the island's trade routes, Taiwan's economy could collapse. He went on to explain that the current drills also targets Taiwan's largest port. It doubles as an important base for Taiwan's Navy. The massive drills come 3 days after Taiwan's new president was inaugurated. He made clear the island would not submit to communist rule.
We have the ideal to pursue peace, but we must not have illusions. As long as China does not give up using force to invade Taiwan, citizens must understand this. Even if we accept all of China's claims and give up our sovereignty, China's ambition to annex Taiwan will not disappear.
The drills are putting his first days in office to the test. Military pressure from China aside, Lai faces chaos inside Taiwan's legislature, where opposition parties that favor closer ties to China hold a majority. Back to China's military drills surrounding Taiwan. China says these are designed to test its ability to, quote, seize power. How far or how close are we to seeing another war break out, given the conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East? We hear insights from Rick Fischer, senior fellow at the International Assessment and Strategy Center. Rick Fischer, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Tiffany, thanks for having me back.
Now, Rick, since Taiwan's new president's inauguration, William Lai, China has been ramping up military drills around Taiwan. China is saying these are designed to test its ability to, quote, seize power. Now, this year's drills seem bigger than in the past. What's your read on the size and why it matters?
What we are beginning to learn, especially from Chinese state media, is that the exercise is probably much more sophisticated in terms of incorporating simulation or synthetic aspects, as the People's Liberation Army likes to call it. Missiles are being rolled out of their shelters, but not fired. But the whole process of the missile exercise is taking place in simulation. And there is also a chat from these same Chinese sources about more sophisticated jointness. That is, the Air Force cooperating with the Navy, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Missile Force cooperating together.
Now, we just saw recently that Russia's Putin was in China. At the time, the two leaders, including Xi Jinping, reaffirmed their no limits partnership. That was launched right before Russia invaded Ukraine over 2 years ago. Given this new level of friendship between the two, what does that mean for Taiwan?
Well, for many years, I have been warning about active Russian participation in either a blockade and or an invasion of Taiwan. I believe that the Chinese and the Russians have been preparing for this for well over a decade. Just last May 2nd, the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, Director Haynes, testified before our Congress of her fear that, yes, Russia would assist Chinese military operations directed against Taiwan. I think to this we also have to add North Korea.
What can the U.S. do now to make sure we aren't caught by surprise when that does happen?
The most important and direct move the United States can make right now is to ramp up production of tactical nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear artillery shells, bombs on aircraft, warheads for the new missiles that we're producing. This is deterrence. And the nuclear aspect is just one small element. The United States needs a much larger Air Force, much larger Navy, a much larger transport Air Force to rapidly send troops from one end of the earth to the other.
Rick Fischer, thank you so much for your time.
Tiffany, thank you.
Taiwan's new president, William Lai, is facing pressure from inside and outside Taiwan. Besides Communist China, Taiwan's opposition parties are pushing a law to boost parliamentary oversight over the president. Lai's ruling party does not have a majority in parliament. But many citizens are standing up to oppose the new law.
Tens of thousands of people took to the streets around Taiwan's parliament earlier today. This was the second rally outside Parliament this week against proposed parliamentary changes. Lai's Democratic Progressive Party holds a minority in Parliament. The two opposition parties, KMT and TPP, together have a majority. Lai's party is trying to stop the opposition from pushing through measures to give lawmakers more oversight over the government.
The KMT and TPP cannot rely solely on majority votes and ignore the voice of the minority. I hope they can discuss democratically. We need discussion, not skip the process and bury those views.
The process does not reflect our democratic value. I will slowly lose my trust in Taiwan's democracy if they continue to pass new laws in this manner. I hope through this protest we can stop, slow down, and improve the process.
The changes would give lawmakers the power to ask the military, private companies, or individuals to disclose information deemed relevant by members of parliament. It would also introduce prison terms for government officials found to be in contempt of parliament.
Lai's ruling party says more debate is needed. Some protesters accuse the opposition parties of trying to force the reforms through and working secretly with Communist China. For decades, key figures of the opposition party have been invited by the Chinese Communist Party for friendly talks. It's commonly believed that Beijing is trying to influence the political map on the island through the opposition parties. A rare peek into the inner workings of China's secret police operation. A former Chinese spy spilled the beans after defecting to Australia. He spoke with NTD about Beijing's tactics to snatch dissidents overseas. Here are the details.
A confession from a former Chinese spy. For 15 years, he worked as an undercover agent, helping Beijing track dissidents around the world and lure them back to China.
Anyone that's against the Chinese Communist Party and Xi Jinping could become a target.
The former spy goes by the name Eric. After defecting to Australia, he's now going public, lifting the veil on a global operation to snatch those critical of Beijing. Key to the operation is a unit inside China's top police agency called the First Bureau. It's in charge of agents like Eric.
It's a bit like Stasi, the KGB, or Gestapo of Nazi Germany. As a political repression tool, it has only one goal, and that is to maintain the Chinese Communist Party's control.
And that includes controlling voices outside China's borders. Eric was but one agent spinning China's web across the globe, tracking dissidents and waiting for the right moment to bait and trap them. According to reports from Safeguard Defenders, Chinese authorities were able to coerce 12,000 people to return to China from over 120 countries over the past decade. Many were sent back to China without even their host countries even being made aware. Eric says he was responsible for tracking down dissidents in Australia, Canada, India, Cambodia, and Thailand.
My main job was to collect information, such as getting inside the target's circle to establish relationships with them. Also to learn their plans ahead of time. You need to know what they're going to do next. This is really important, even more so than simply arresting an average person.
Here's how it works.
My handler will send over a list of targets. For example, if they want to coerce someone to return to China, and I would talk to them to come up with a plan for how to approach that person online and in person, to see if I could lure them to a place where it's easier to take control of him.
One of the targets was a political cartoonist called Red Pepper. His satirical cartoons often mock the Chinese Communist Party and its leader Xi Jinping.
It was about the end of 2016. Eric messaged me on Twitter saying he liked my cartoons and wanted to chat privately. We later communicated through email. He approached me as someone that was pro-democracy.
Posing as a real estate agent, Eric asked Red Pepper to design a logo for a project. It went smoothly.
I only knew years later that this was a trap to win my trust.
Once the logo was done, Eric extended another job offer with one condition, that Red Pepper had to go to Cambodia for the job interview.
But I have a bad impression of Southeast Asian countries, that they're not safe. I don't trust them because of their human rights records, especially Cambodia. So I replied to him saying I wouldn't go.
Thailand, Burma, Laos, these countries are the top choices for Chinese secret police trying to catch dissidents. Local governments turn a blind eye to Chinese operations and sometimes even work with Chinese agents.
Red Pepper was in the dark about the plan to snatch him until a reporter from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation reached out to him to confirm Eric's story.
Turns out the Eric that was in communication with me defected.
Eric said he was coerced into working as a spy and always wanted to flee. Asked why he went public with his closely guarded secrets.
Of course I have my own reasons. Some of them I can't really disclose. But also like what the news report said, it fits into my values. I have always believed that the inner workings of these secret worlds should be disclosed one day.
He said only by understanding the dark side of those in power can the public better monitor its government.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 3 years. If you'd like to support us, consider donating. Find us at donorbox.org/China-in-focus or subscribe to our partner platform Epic TV, where you can watch our full episodes. Just click the link down below. Here's what to look out for in our second half. The rivalry between the free world and communist rule extending to Africa. President Biden met with his counterpart from Kenya. The African country embraces a democratic system while under heavy influence from the Chinese Communist Party. The U.S. urging other countries in the West to form an alliance to guard against the China threat. Financial chiefs from 7 of the world's wealthiest democracies are sitting down to find out more. And a former U.S. Marine is one step closer to extradition due to his helping train Beijing's military troops. If approved, he might spend the rest of his life in U.S. prison. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you soon.